His hand was still gripping the headboard. My breath hadn't steadied. Neither of us spoke, because we both knew what just happened had changed everything. If that first line pulled you in, wait until you hear the rest. Like this video and hit subscribe, because stories like this don't come with a warning. The first time I saw Wolf Estate, I understood why no one ever left it the same. It sat like a scar on the hill above Black Hollow, its stone walls aged, as if they remembered every betrayal that had ever occurred inside them. Snow whispered across the driveway as I stepped out of the car, the cold biting through the thin wool of my coat. The driver said nothing. He didn't need to. This wasn't a ride. It was a delivery. I adjusted my gloves, squared my shoulders, and looked up at the black iron gates. They opened before I could raise a hand. He was already watching. From the balcony, Damien Wolf stood still as a statue, dark coat draped over a lean frame, one hand gripping the railing, the other holding a glass. Whiskey, most likely. He didn't wave. He didn't smile, but I felt it. His eyes were on me, measuring, judging, possessing. Let him think he already owned me. Let him believe I was just another trembling lamb sent to the slaughter. That was exactly what I needed him to believe. I walked through the front door like I was walking into a confession booth. Head bowed, lips tight, secrets behind every breath. The interior was colder than the Vermont air, the scent of cedarwood and aged paper clinging to the stone walls. No staff, no welcoming committee, just silence. Silence, and him. He descended the grand staircase slowly, like a man used to being waited on. His shoes clicked against the marble, each step deliberate. His face, sharp jaw, angular cheekbones, lips set in a firm line, was more beautiful than I remembered from the photos. But it wasn't beauty that made him dangerous. It was the way he looked at me, like he already knew what breaking me would sound like. "Evelyn Grace Carter," he said, voice low and smooth. "You're punctual. Always." I met his gaze just long enough, then lowered mine. "Mr. Wolf?" His brow twitched. I knew he didn't like that. "You may call me Damien," he said. "We are, after all, married in everything but ceremony." I gave the smallest nod, folding my hands in front of me, the picture of innocence. "If that's your wish." He stepped closer, close enough for me to smell the whiskey and control on him. He circled me once, like a wolf inspecting the offering. "You're quiet," he said. I was taught it's unbecoming to speak before a man of higher authority. He laughed once, dry, surprised. So obedient. He didn't know that every word out of my mouth had been rehearsed. Every glance, every silence, every breath calculated like a chess move. He thought I was being respectful, but really, I was studying him. The contract I signed 3 nights ago burned in my mind, its clauses cold and precise. In exchange for the full clearing of the Carter family debt, I would become Mrs. Evelyn Wolf. The entire town of Black Hollow, my church included, was on the verge of collapse. This marriage was the bargain. What Damien didn't know was that I hadn't hesitated. I hadn't cried. I had signed with steady hands and dry eyes, because I knew exactly what I was walking into. I wasn't here to be his wife. I was here to become his undoing. "Would you like a tour?" he asked, almost bored. "I'd like to see the chapel," I said. That stopped him. He turned back, slower this time. "The chapel?" "The old one behind the estate," I said softly. "My father said it was the first thing built in Black Hollow." His eyes narrowed. "It's condemned, unsafe." "I'd still like to see it," I replied, as sweetly as I could. He studied me, not with suspicion, but with curiosity. "I see," he said eventually. "You're not afraid of decay." I smiled. "It's where all things begin, isn't it?" He didn't answer. He just turned and walked away. the conversation clearly over. I was shown to a room, not the master, of course, not yet. The chamber was large, cold, with tall windows and a fireplace that hadn't been lit in years. My suitcase was all ready, waiting at the foot of the bed, unopened. I walked to the mirror. My reflection was exactly as it should be. Ivory skin, long hair pinned back, eyes wide but not too wide. I touched my lips. Still pink. Still untouched. I unpinned my hair, letting it fall past my shoulders. I looked myself in the eye. Let him watch me. Let him think I am his prey. Because what he doesn't know is that I chose this hunt. He thinks I'm a virgin. He's right, but I'm no innocent. And I didn't sign that deal to survive. I signed it to win. The morning came slowly in Wolf Estate. Sunlight filtered through the frost-lined windows in hesitant streaks, casting long shadows across the stone floor. I didn't sleep, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to. You don't sleep on the battlefield. I sat at the vanity, brushing my hair in long, deliberate strokes. Every movement mattered. Every flick of the wrist. Every breath, drawn quietly in the cold air. I didn't need to seduce Damien Wolf. I needed to haunt him. The knock came at 8:03 a.m., exactly as I expected. Eliza, the housekeeper said when I opened the door. Mid-60s, silver hair in a tight bun. Mr. Wolf expects you for breakfast, the East dining room. Not the main one, not formal. Not yet, thank you, I said sweetly. She didn't smile. I doubted anyone here remembered how. I chose a soft blue dress, modest neckline, long sleeves, cinched at the waist with a satin ribbon. It whispered purity. My mother would have approved. My father would have been proud. The hem danced around my calves as I descended the staircase, the silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Damien was already seated, one hand around a coffee cup, the other scrolling through a tablet. Black sweater, sleeves pushed up, forearms taut. His watch gleamed. Gold, silent, expensive. He looked up, then paused. His eyes flickered, just slightly, over the curve of my waist, the tilt of my neck. He masked it quickly, but I caught it. A crack. Small, but real. Good morning, I said, softly. He nodded once. You're early. I was taught never to keep a man waiting. A beat. He sipped his coffee. Were you taught anything else? I let a little blush rise to my cheeks. A few things. That made him pause. I saw it. The inhale he held a second too long. He didn't know what to do with me. A virgin he owned but couldn't touch. A girl who submitted but never flinched. He gestured to the seat across from him. I sat down, hands folded neatly on my lap. You didn't ask for anything yesterday, he said. There's nothing I need. No questions? His tone sharpened. No demands? Not even a phone call? To your family? I said goodbye when I left, I answered. There's no use reaching back. Damien studied me the way you study an unfamiliar language, slowly, with skepticism and intrigue. He was used to screaming, to fear, to trembling hands and tears that bought time. I gave him none of that. I want this marriage to work, Mr. Wolf. Damien. Lowered my gaze. Damien? And what does working look like to you? A quiet home, mutual respect, a place to feel safe. A silence hung between us. Safe, he repeated, as if it were a word he didn't quite believe in. Yes. I met his eyes. I trust you. A lie, but a beautiful one. He stood abruptly. I have meetings all day. You'll have the house. I don't recommend the West Wing. It's under reconstruction. Another lie. That's where he kept the locked rooms, the paper trails, The files no one was allowed to see. Of course, I said sweetly. He looked like he wanted to say more, but instead, he left. His footsteps echoing down the hallway like a warning. I waited until I couldn't hear them anymore. Then I stood, walked to the window, and began my next move. The library was massive. 2 stories, books lining every wall, old volumes that hadn't been touched in decades. I wandered slowly, trailing fingers along dusty spines, until I found it. The second shelf, left corner, behind the Greek classics. A door. Narrow. Hidden. I didn't open it. Not yet. But I would. Not today, not tomorrow. But soon. I spent the afternoon in the greenhouse. No cameras there, just glass, vines, and air that smelled like overwatered roses. I sat on the bench in the center, folded my hands, and waited. He found me just after 5. Damien never entered quietly. His presence filled the space before his footsteps ever did. I didn't turn around when he appeared behind me. I simply looked forward, peaceful, still. This is your second time asking to be near things that are ruined, I smiled. Flowers bloom best in forgotten corners. Do they? Don't you think so? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked around the bench and sat beside me. I felt his eyes on me again. They slid over the pale skin of my hands, the curve of my throat. But he didn't touch me. He never did. That was the game. He wanted me. But he wanted me to ask for it first. Your file says you've never been in a relationship. I tilted my head. You had me investigated? I don't take in strangers. I buy them. I study them. His words didn't sting. I expected them. Then you already know I've never been kissed. Damien went still. I assumed that, he said after a long pause. You carry it like armor. I turned to him. Do you like that? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened. He rose too quickly and left without another word. I waited until I was alone again, then whispered to no one. You want me, but I'll make you need me. And when you beg, I'll decide whether to give in. There are 2 kinds of silence in Wolf Estate. The first is clean, like snowfall, or a church before the hymn. The second is the kind that suffocates, heavy with things unsaid, felt only in the space between glances and breaths. That was the silence I woke up to. Breakfast was waiting on the tray outside my door. Porcelain. Plates, warm scones, dark coffee. No note, no sound, just absence. Damien didn't show himself that morning. He was running. From what? I wasn't sure yet. But I would find out. I spent the next 3 hours walking the east corridor. I counted every painting, every locked door, memorized the cracks in the wallpaper. Wolf Estate was more than a home. It was a vault. And I intended to crack it open. The third room on the left was the only one without a camera in the hallway. I tested the knob. Locked. Of course. The housekeeper passed by just then, and I played my role flawlessly. Startled, apologetic, cheeks flushed. I'm so sorry I got turned around. I was looking for the greenhouse. She nodded once. This side of the house is off limits, Mrs. Wolf. I gave her a soft smile. Of course. I won't wander again. She didn't say it, but I knew she'd report me. Good. Let him hear it. Let him know I was curious. Let him wonder what I already suspected. That afternoon, I visited the chapel behind the estate, alone. The wooden door groaned like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside, dust danced in sunbeams that filtered through, cracked stained glass. It smelled of mildew and forgotten prayers. This was where it happened, where my mother last sang, where she was found, lips blue, eyes open, lying beneath the altar. A suicide, they said. But nothing in my mother's letters suggested despair. Just fear. Fear of something, or someone. I knelt in the front pew, not to pray, just to listen. To remember the hymns she hummed while brushing my hair. To imagine her voice echoing off these very walls. You visit this place often. His voice cut through the stillness behind me. I didn't turn. It brings me peace. Damien's footsteps echoed down the aisle. He didn't stop until he stood at the altar, towering over me. A god of stone. Or a fallen angel. I should have had it torn down years ago. He said flatly, "It serves no purpose." I stood slowly, facing him. "Is that what you do with things that make you uncomfortable? Tear them down?" He narrowed his eyes. "Is that what you think I am?" "No." I tilted my head, eyes steady. "I think you're a man who fears what he can't control." A pause. A flicker of something behind his gaze. Curiosity, maybe. Or rage. I couldn't tell. "You're bold," he said finally. "I'm honest." His gaze dropped, just briefly, to my lips. It lasted half a second. But it was there. A fissure. That night, I returned to the library. The hidden door behind the Greek classics opened with a whisper. Inside, darkness, still and thick. I slipped in, careful not to disturb the dust. It was a small room, windowless, lined with filing cabinets and old ledgers. I pulled open the first drawer. Banking records, real estate, donations made in large sums to anonymous recipients. I took photos with the burner phone I hid in my boot. The second drawer was more interesting. Personnel files, names I didn't recognize, except one. Clara Harper. My mother. I froze. Her file was thin. 1 page. It said she worked at Wolf Estate for 17 months as domestic staff. No notes, no complaints, but one word was stamped in red across the bottom. Terminated. The date? 3 days before her death. I returned to my room just before midnight, my heart hammering beneath my nightgown. Someone had lit the fireplace. Damien was inside. He stood near the hearth, one hand on the mantel, the other holding a glass. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "You were in the restricted wing." I didn't lie. "Yes." He turned. His jaw was tight. "Why?" "Because I want to understand the man I married." A muscle ticked in his cheek. "You're not afraid of me?" "No." "You should be. Why? Will you hurt me?" Silence. I took a step closer. My voice softened. "Will you break me, Mr. Wolf?" He flinched. I stepped even closer, into the glow of the firelight. "You won't. You can't. Because the moment you touch me, it's over, isn't it?" His eyes darkened. "You've built a kingdom on fear, Damien. But I'm not afraid. And that terrifies you." He crossed the room in a second. I thought he'd grab me, shake me, prove me wrong. But he didn't. He just stared. "I don't know what." "You are," he whispered. I leaned in, so close our lips nearly brushed. "I'm the edge of your control." Then I turned and walked past him, letting my nightgown brush against his arm. In the hallway, I allowed myself one breath of victory. Just one. Because the cracks were forming, and Damien Wolf was starting to break. The storm came without warning. By dusk, the wind howled like a chorus of ghosts through the iron spires of Wolf Estate. Windows rattled, trees bent. Somewhere in the distance, thunder cracked so sharply it felt like the earth itself had splintered. I chose this night for a reason. I slipped out the back door just as the rain began. Soft at first, then relentless. My boots sank into the wet. Earth as I crossed the yard behind the estate, my coat pulled tight, my heart steady. The chapel waited for me. Its roof sagged with age. Ivy clung to stone like veins on a corpse. But inside, the space felt preserved, as if grief had kept it frozen in time. I stepped into the silence. The door groaned shut behind me. My hair stuck to my neck. Water soaked my clothes until the fabric clung like second skin. I lit a candle on the altar and sat in the front pew, legs curled beneath me, body shivering, but not from the cold. I wasn't sure how long I sat there before I felt it. Not a sound, just presence. He was behind me. "I told you not to come here," Damien said, voice cutting through the dark like a blade. I didn't turn. "So punish me." The silence that followed was heavier than his footsteps. He moved down the aisle slowly, deliberately, like a predator forced into mercy. "You think this is a game," he said. "I know it is," I whispered. "And you're losing." His hand shot out, slamming against the end of the pew beside me. The sound echoed, sharp and hollow. I didn't flinch. "You have no idea what you're doing." I rose slowly, facing him. Rain glistened on my skin. The candlelight flickered, casting him in half shadow. "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said. "I've watched you unravel since the day I walked through your door." Damien's jaw flexed. His chest rose and fell faster than it should. "You parade around in innocence like armor," he growled. "No, I wear it like silk." I took a step closer. "And you're dying to tear it." He grabbed my wrist. Finally. Not rough, not painful, just desperate. "You don't understand what I've done," he said through clenched teeth. "What I'm capable of." "I'm not afraid of what you've done," I said. "I'm afraid of what you feel." His eyes flared. "You think you're in control," he said. "I know I am." And then, it snapped. He pulled me into him, hands burying in my wet hair, mouth crashing onto mine with a force that stole the air from my lungs. It wasn't a kiss. It was a breakdown. Every wall, every lie, every ounce of discipline he'd fought to keep intact, obliterated in a single breath. I kissed him back. Harder. His hands gripped my waist, lifted me to the altar like I weighed nothing. I could feel his body trembling, not from hesitation, but from the pressure of weeks of restraint collapsing in a heartbeat. "You're dangerous," he said against my mouth. "So break me." I dared. But he didn't. Not yet. He pulled back, chest heaving, jaw clenched like he was holding back a scream. "I want to ruin you," he said. I reached up, traced the line of his cheek, gentle. "You already have." His expression shattered. He took 2 steps back, ran both hands through his hair, turned away like the sight of me burned him. "I can't," he started. But I was already walking toward him. I placed a hand on his back. "You already did," I whispered. And then, just like that, he dropped to his knees. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't performative. It was raw. The sound that came from his throat wasn't words. It was surrender. I stood there, water dripping down my spine, heart racing, breath uneven. He looked up at me, eyes wild, voice rough. "I hate what you've done to me." I knelt down, took his face in my hands. "You mean you hate what I've shown you?" His lips parted, but no protest came. Just silence. Honest, tortured silence. We stayed there for minutes, or hours, I couldn't tell. Knees pressed to wet stone, bodies close but untouched. "I'm not who you think I am," he finally whispered. I pressed my forehead to his. "I know," I said. Later, I followed him back inside. We didn't speak. The storm roared outside, but inside the house it was quiet, as if everything that needed to be screamed had already been screamed in silence. I returned to my room alone, stripped out of my wet clothes, let my hair down, stared at myself in the mirror. He had cracked, but not enough, not yet. He kissed me. Yes. Lost control. Yes. Fell to his knees. But he hadn't touched me the way he wanted. He was still holding back, which meant the game wasn't over. It was only now that it truly began. He didn't knock. He didn't ask. He just opened the door, stepped inside, and locked it behind him. Midnight had just passed. The fireplace in my room burned low, casting amber light over silk sheets and bare skin beneath a sheer robe. I sat by the window, one leg drawn under me, hair loose, breathing steady. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Damien stood in the doorway, chest rising and falling with restrained fury. His shirt was half unbuttoned, black slacks wrinkled like he'd been pacing for hours. His tie hung from his fingers, tight, wound, like a weapon. I rose slowly, letting the robe slip open just enough to reveal the line of my collarbone. "Say it," I whispered. His jaw clenched. "You win." I tilted my head. What did I win? He crossed the room in 3 strides. The tie dropped from his hand. One palm landed against the wall beside my head, the other curled around my hip. "You," he growled. "I fought it. Every goddamn second. But you," his voice broke. "You got in under my skin and set it all on fire." He didn't wait for permission. His mouth found mine, urgent, brutal, consuming. No prelude, no teasing. Just heat and hunger and war colliding in a single kiss. His hand slid down my back, fingers gripping the curve of me like he didn't trust himself to let go. I pulled his shirt open, buttons clattering to the floor, fabric torn in my haste. His body was sculpted from something that had survived fire. Taut muscle, rough edges, skin scarred in places where softness had never grown. He lifted me effortlessly, my legs wrapping around his waist. My back hit the wall, but I didn't flinch. I arched into him, fingers in his hair, dragging him closer. He was losing control, and it was glorious. "You're not fragile," he hissed against my throat. "No," I gasped. I never was. His mouth trailed down my neck, his tongue tracing the hollow of my collarbone. He bit, just enough to mark. And I moaned, loud, raw, real. He carried me to the bed, dropped me into silk sheets, and stood back just long enough to tear off what remained of his clothes. Then he climbed over me, and everything else disappeared. No titles, no contracts, no games. Just skin on skin, breath on breath, hands learning every inch like they'd waited lifetimes. His fingers slid up my thighs, slow but firm, tracing the outline of power he'd mistaken for innocence. I shifted beneath him, opened willingly, no fear, no hesitation. "I thought you were untouched," he rasped, eyes locked on mine. "I was," I whispered, pulling him down to me. But not anymore. When he pushed into me, it wasn't gentle. It was claiming. His hands gripped mine above my head, pinning me as he moved. Slow at first, then faster, deeper, harder. I met him thrust for thrust, breath for breath, my body answering every demand with a challenge of its own. The headboard hit the wall. The mattress creaked beneath us. Sweat beaded on his spine. I wrapped my legs tighter around his waist and pulled him in harder. He cursed, groaned, bit my shoulder. He was unraveling, and I was in control of every thread. "Look at me," I said. His eyes met mine. "This is mine now," I whispered. "You, this He let out a low, guttural sound, half pain, half surrender, and buried himself deeper, faster, his rhythm losing discipline, becoming need. "You've ruined me," he gasped. "You fucking ruined me." I kissed him hard. Good. The orgasm tore through both of us like wildfire. He collapsed into me, shaking, his forehead pressed to my shoulder, breath ragged against my skin. We lay tangled in the aftermath, naked, sweating, chests rising and falling in sync. For the first time since we met, Damien Wolfe didn't speak. He just held on, tighter than before. Like if he let go, the world might end. I traced lazy circles on his back, heart still pounding. "You're not the man I was warned about," I murmured. He lifted his head, eyes raw, voice hoarse. "That man died the second he touched you," I smiled, then whispered the final blow. "I never needed to be saved, Damien. I came here to conquer." He didn't protest, because he already knew. He stayed in my bed until the fireplace dimmed to coals. Neither of us spoke. His arm lay heavy over my stomach, his breath brushing the side of my neck in slow, uneven waves. I listened to it, counted it, memorized it. He didn't hold me like a man claiming. He held me like a man who had nothing else left to hold on to. At some point he shifted onto his back, eyes fixed on the ceiling, jaw locked tight again. The weight of silence returned. Different. Now, not tense, but burdened. "I need to tell you something," Damien said finally. I turned to him slowly, watching the hard lines of his face in the flickering firelight. "I won't beg," I said, "but I'll listen." He looked at me then. Really, looked. As if I were a puzzle he hadn't known how to solve, until I let him fall apart inside me. "There are things about this estate," he began. "About me. About your mother. Things you're not going to want to hear." "I already know she didn't kill herself," I said. "I found the file." His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes dropped, like a door closing behind him. "Then you also know I signed her termination form." "I saw that." "Yes, but you don't know why." I waited, said nothing. "She found something she shouldn't have," Damien said, voice low. "Documents, wire transfers, names. She confronted one of my former partners. She thought she could blackmail him into leaving the estate." He paused. She wasn't wrong, but she didn't understand the kind of man he was. He sat up, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. The glow from the hearth etched him in gold and shadow. "He was worse than me," Damien continued. "Colder, crueler. I gave the order to fire her because I thought that would keep her safe, get her off the property, remove her from the game." His voice broke, just slightly, but it was already too late. My mouth went dry. "Did you know he was going to kill her?" Damien turned to me, face blank, eyes burning. "No." "Did you try to stop him?" His hands clenched into fists. "By the time I knew she was missing, she was already dead. And the bastard was already gone." I stood, wrapping the silk sheet around me, the cold air stinging where his warmth had been. "You covered it up," I said. "I buried it. What's the difference?" He rose too, barefoot on stone, naked in every way now. Physically, emotionally, morally. "I buried it, because if I didn't, the man who did it would have come for you and your father next. I made it look like suicide. Quiet. Painless. I paid. Off the records, the press, even your pastor. My knees almost gave out. You paid him to lie?" "To protect you," he said. "Because even then, I knew—" He stopped himself. I crossed the room slowly. "Say it." Damien's throat worked. Even then, I knew what you'd grow into. I stared at him. You saw me as a child. Yes. And I knew if I let your mother die publicly, the whole town would drown in the fallout. You would have been eaten alive. I let the sheet fall. I stood there, completely bare. No lies, no armor, no act. Do you regret it? I asked. All of it. Even me? His eyes darkened. Especially you. He moved toward me, stopped inches away. His voice dropped to a whisper. Because you've become the only thing that can ruin me again. Later, he brought me to the West Wing, unlocked the doors one by one. Let me see it all. The records, the vaults, the file marked Carter. Everything redacted except for one note in Damien's own handwriting. 2. Dangerous, too smart, too close. Not about my mother. About me. I wrote that the day you turned 18. He admitted. I read it twice. You were afraid of me back then, I said. I still am. We stood in the corridor outside the vault room, neither of us speaking. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, slow, covering the sins of the estate in white. I looked up at him. He looked away first. You keep showing me who you really are, I said. And you haven't run, he replied. Should I? Most would. I touched his chest, just above his heart. Felt it hammering beneath my palm. You think I came here to run? No, he said. You came here to burn it all down. I smiled. Maybe. But now? Now? I don't know if I want to leave the ashes behind. That night, he didn't sleep in the guest room. He climbed into my bed without a word, pulled me into his arms, and didn't let go. I could feel it in the way he held me, not possessive, not dominant, just quiet. Like if he stopped holding, something would vanish. And maybe it would. Because I wasn't the girl he thought I was, and he wasn't the monster I wanted him to be. Now we were just two people lying in the wreckage, trying to figure out if love was something you could build from ruin, or if it would just keep tearing you apart. I found the envelope tucked beneath the ledger on Damien's desk. I wasn't snooping. At least, that's what I told myself. But I'd been living inside Wolf Estate long enough to know that nothing stayed buried unless someone wanted it to stay dead. I was already deep in the ashes. What was one more secret? I opened it slowly. The paper was thick, expensive. Legal stationery, a contract, dated 1 month before our marriage. Damien Wolf offering payment to the Carter family. Payment, not settlement, not donation, not protection. Just one word at the top in bold black print. Purchase agreement. My name was listed on the second page, like I was a parcel of land. Like I had a price tag. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I folded the document, slid it back where I found it, and walked out of his office like a woman who hadn't just watched her soul fracture. That night, I said nothing. I let him hold me in bed, kiss my neck, trace my spine with his fingers. I let him whisper promises he didn't know I no longer believed, and in the morning, I was gone. The train station in Black Hollow was barely more than a platform and a rusted sign. I wore a long coat, gloves, scarf, all the things people wear when they're trying to disappear. No one tried to stop me, except Damien. He appeared like smoke, silent, sudden, undeniable. I turned when I heard my name, whispered like it hurt to say, Evelyn. He stood on the edge of the platform, dressed in black, snow catching in his hair, melting against his lashes. He looked older, unraveled. I read it, I said. The contract. His jaw clenched. Let me explain. You paid for me. I protected you. Same difference, I snapped. He stepped closer, eyes pleading. That agreement was drafted before I knew who you were, before I understood what you'd become. What I'd become, I repeated coldly, like I'm some kind of transformation project. No, his voice cracked, like you're the one thing I didn't see coming. I stared at him, the man who had held me like he couldn't breathe without me. The man who, apparently, once thought I could be bought. You lied. I kept you safe. You controlled me. I surrendered to you. Silence. Then, I trusted you, Damien. I trusted you back. My voice lowered. But you never chose me. He took a breath, then another. Slowly, he dropped to his knees, right there in the snow. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't planned. It was desperate. People stared. Someone took out a phone. He didn't care. Snowflakes clung to his lashes. His coat soaked through at the knees. He looked up at me like he didn't know how to ask for anything the right way. I choose you now, he said. No more contracts. No more masks. Just me. Broken. Undone. Yours. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Why now? I asked, voice trembling. Because losing you feels worse than every sin I've ever buried. The train's horn howled in the distance. I looked down at him. This man who once ruled a town, now kneeling in front of me like I was his absolution. You hurt me, I whispered. I'll spend the rest of my life healing that, he said. If you'll let me. I stepped forward, knelt too, took his face in my hands. I don't want the man who bought me, I said. I want the man who bled for me. You have him. I want the man who broke so I could breathe. Him. I leaned forward, pressed my forehead to his. I want the man who knelt in the snow. I'm not getting up, he whispered, until you say I can. We missed the train. On purpose. We walked back to Wolf Estate hand in hand, shoes soaked, coats dripping, hearts no longer hidden behind contracts or shadows. He didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't offer it. But something passed between us in that frozen hour. Something raw. Something earned. Something that sounded a lot like love. Returned to the chapel at dawn. Not because it was holy, not because it was expected, but because it was the only place we'd both fallen and survived. The stained glass glowed faintly as the sun crawled through the clouds. Snow lined the pews in powdery drifts, creeping through the cracks in the stone. Cold wrapped around us, like a second skin. But we didn't notice. Damien stood at the altar, same as the first time, but this time, he didn't tower. He waited. I walked toward him with no veil, no bouquet, no music, just breath, steady and quiet, and a heart no longer hiding behind strategy. He reached for my hands. I gave them freely. There's no priest, he said, almost apologetically. I don't need one, I replied. I only need the truth. He let out a breath like a man stepping over a cliff. Then I'll give you mine. His thumbs brushed my knuckles. I built a life out of fear and control, he said. I traded silence for safety, power for peace, but nothing ever made me feel whole until the night you looked me in the eye and said you weren't afraid of me. I said nothing. Just let him keep going. Let the man I once plotted to break offer me everything instead. I've owned cities, commanded men. But I've never surrendered anything, he said. Until you. He swallowed. I vow to never own you. Only to hold you, when you want to be held. To never silence you, only to listen. Especially when it's hard. And I vow that if you ever need to leave me, I'll let you. but I'll spend every day before that giving you a reason to stay. Silence. Not empty. Sacred. I stepped closer. My turn, I said, placed a hand on his chest, just over his heart. I came here with a plan, I said. To outsmart you, to unmake you, to find the monster who killed my mother and expose the man behind the mask. His eyes flickered. He didn't flinch. But somewhere in the unraveling, I found something I didn't expect. I leaned in, voice quiet. I found a man with blood on his hands and fire in his heart. I found a broken protector, not a destroyer. I found the man who knelt in the snow not because he had to, but because I mattered more than his pride. He said nothing. His grip tightened just a little. I vowed to never let fear speak louder than trust, to stand beside you, not beneath you, to forgive what can be forgiven, and fight for what still matters. And I vow this: you are not my redemption. You are my choice. A breath escaped his lips like something sacred. He reached into his coat, pocket, and pulled out a simple gold band. No diamonds, no design, just warmth. It was my mother's, he said. She wore it until the day she died. He slid it onto my finger. It fit. I reached into my own coat, pulled out a matching band from my mother's old jewelry box, the one she'd hidden away when she started working at Wolf Estate. I slid it onto his finger without words. It didn't need them. We didn't kiss at the altar. Not right away. We walked outside first, hand in hand, through the snow. Wolf Estate loomed behind us, no longer a prison, no longer a fortress, just a home. He stopped under the same archway where we'd first locked eyes. Back then, I was a girl in wool and gloves, pretending to tremble. Now, I was the woman he couldn't live without. He cupped my face gently, like something fragile that had chosen not to break. You undid me, he whispered. No, I smiled. You unmasked yourself. I just refused to look away. His mouth found mine, slow, warm, steady, no crashing, no gasping, just lips moving like a promise made in breath and bone. Later, in our room, we lay tangled in sheets, skin to skin, no longer driven by hunger, but by heat that never needed to burn to prove itself. His hands moved slower now. Mine knew where they belonged. We breathed in sync. No games, no weapons, just us. He pressed his forehead to mine in the quiet after. Mine, he said softly. Yours, I answered. Then, after a beat, forever. If this story moved you, stirred something deep, or kept you holding your breath until the final word, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you want more stories that burn slow, break hard, and heal real, subscribe to the channel. Your next favorite story is waiting.